The No Nonsense Roundtable, a weekly radio show and podcast where host Dom Geneva interviews guests from all walks of life, all with amazing stories to tell. And now, here's your host, Dom Geneva.
Well, I'd like to welcome my first guest here, and anybody hearing my voice right now, I know today I sound like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. because I have this raspy voice from a very long cold, and it's great that Carol Crossett is here with me by Zoom because you wouldn't want to be in the same room with me right now, Carol. So Carol Crossett, she's on the show because we're having a show about her organization and the tasks that they take on. And I have to tell you, I am a big believer and a fan of the organization that she started here in New York, and it is Feminists Choosing Life New York. And Carol, thank you for coming back onto the show.
You're welcome, Dom. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, the thing about the Feminists Choosing Life, I love the title because everybody's talking about choice. You know, well, choosing life is a choice too. I mean, to value life and the propagation of life, you know, God's plan, whether you think it's God's plan or not. I mean, it's this future of our society or race or humanity is something admirable. And you know, the thing is that my personal opinion is that this word feminist has become co-opted by a bunch of people that say that you can't be a woman without being a feminist, but a feminist is a career person, not somebody who is basically family oriented. And I went to well, this is probably the second or third time I went to your banquet or your fundraiser, and there were two magnificent speakers at the event. One of which I'm going to interview next, and Melissa. Ogden. Right? Ohden. I'm sorry. Yeah, she was an abortion survivor. I don't mean somebody who had an abortion herself, but she was an abortion survivor. She's not supposed to be here, and she has a wonderful story about what she does. But Carol, let's talk a little bit about the organization that you founded, when you founded it, and the direction of the organization, what you do.
Yeah, it was founded officially. It came out with an ad in the newspaper of a lot of endorsers in the community and in New York State, and that was in September of 1989. So we've actually been organized since about 1988. And I'm glad you mentioned about Melissa, and she's described as a victim of abortion. And you may know that some of the people that attended the gala where she spoke, assumed that she had an abortion. And that is certainly to be expected, because many women, not many women, but a number of women in the leadership of Feminists Choosing Life have had abortions. And so, you know, they believe that it was a wrong decision, that they suffered, different individuals suffered depression, anxiety. And so this is their way of kind of turning the corner to help other women. So when Melissa was advertised as a survivor of abortion, people automatically just felt like, yeah, she was a woman who had an abortion. She is doing well, and we want to hear her story. But as you pointed out, no, she is the product of an abortion. She is a child that was aborted. And people, you know, they're like, what are you saying? I don't understand what you're saying. So it's it's important for people to know before they hear Melissa, because Melissa, if you looked at some of the faces of the people at the gala, it was a sold out event.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at some of those faces, people were like in the beginning, they weren't following her at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then they kind of halfway through, if you just looked at people's faces, they were like, what? Are you were an aborted child? Aren't
Mm-hmm.
all aborted children like dead? So it's very important that your audience understands that she was the product of an abortion and
And it does.
survived.
And it doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. But the other thing is that when you talk to Melissa, she was supposed to be disposed of. I mean, she was born alive, and then the story goes that the nurse was like, "No, this is a viable child," and just by the luck of God, she's here. But she
Mhm.
was supposed to be disposed of as medical waste, I would suppose.
That's right. That's right. It's hard to wrap your arms around it.
Well,
Um, yeah.
yeah, I go through this thing. I'm sure I'm going to mention it when I interview her, but um, I can understand, but not agree to some things. Okay, I can understand why somebody would say, at a couple of weeks, it's a bunch of cells. Okay, I got that. I don't agree with that. I think that make an error that's a human being. Okay, but that's my opinion. Somebody has a different opinion. But when you get to the eighth and ninth month and you say that you can abort the child, that's a child, that's a human being. So at what point does that become a human being? I mean,
Mhm.
I mean that is the question. And we have some of our states, like in New York, have such a liberal law with that it just makes you wonder. It's not the same way across the country, and it's certainly not that way in Europe. I mean, Europe is not this liberal when it comes to abortions.
That's right. They're only 12 weeks. Most of those countries are 12 weeks. And because of Doe versus Bolton was a decided immediately after Roe versus Wade. Roe versus Wade was based on a woman who was raped in Texas.
Hmm.
Doe versus Bolton was decided immediately after that, and Doe allowed abortion um, for any reason at any time,
Hmm.
and people and that would be it was for women's health reasons. It was
Hmm.
health reasons. But if you see the definition of health in abortion law, it is health based on emotional, physical, psychological, and familial. So you think, what wouldn't fall within that
Right.
category? Familial could be, I already have,
Hmm.
3 children, 4 children, 2 children. Familial could be, my husband doesn't want a child. Familial, emotional. This allows really for any reason at any time. So, yeah, this is important that we recognize this.
Well, one of the things I respect about you and your organization is that you're not rock throwers and Molotov cocktail throwers and whatever. You are very a very kind, loving, educational, focused a group of women and men who believe in the sanctity of life and life. It needs to be propagated and celebrated. And the thing is that I see that in hopefully I'll get the commercial that or PSA I guess they would call it that you did now. It was I tell you it was spot on, and it's spot on in that it was saying that if you're pregnant and you're having problems, there are people to talk to and we will help you. And that is such a much better message than, you want an abortion, you're evil, you shouldn't, you're trying to attract people who figure that they don't have any other choice, and you're trying to give them some help and support. And I think that commercial, I think, well, it was only 30 seconds, but it's really, really good.
I'm so glad. Are you going to be able to show that? Do you have a copy of that?
Yeah, I will by hook or by
Mhm.
crook. I'll get that
Okay,
into
good.
this. I'll
Yes,
get
I'm sure
this
we
into
can
the
get it.
well, obviously into the YouTube. I don't know if the audio works for radio or not, but we're gonna throw it in there and whatever. But yeah, we're gonna have it in the show for people to listen to and whatever. But really, really a nice job. But
Well,
it shows about your attitude too. So.
yeah, well, I do have to say, in all honesty, that there are, I've never met a rock thrower, a Molotov cocktail thrower, and I've been part of activism for over 40 years. But,
Mhm.
I'm sure there are some in the abortion movement that do that, like there are in any movement. But basically, you're right. These are people who are loving. They're there to help women. Sidewalk advocates are there to give women what they need, because we understand that probably half of the abortions are because of lack of economic support for
Mhm.
women. So that is, I think, 49% is the last statistic that I've heard,
Mhm.
Don. Um, and so, yeah, so that the sad part of that is that there are 51% of abortions that happen not for reasons of economics, and so that is something else to
Yeah.
address and consider.
Well, the whole name of the organization, and I know I said this just a couple of minutes ago, is that feminists are choosing life as a choice. I mean, you could say, well, I'm pro-choice. Well, that means I'm pro-abortion. No, I'm pro-choice. I'm pro-anti-abortion. So, I mean, it's a great
Pro anti
it's a great name. Now, how big is your organization here in New York, and are there more organizations across the country?
We are the only Feminists Choosing Life of New York.
Hmm.
We originally were part of Feminists for Life of America, which
Okay.
is a national organization, and they had chapters. They abandoned their chapters. I think in 2006.
Hmm.
And so there are a number of feminist groups like ourselves that
Hmm.
are feminists. I certainly consider myself a feminist. I'm more of a liberal than I am a conservative. I'm a Democrat.
Hmm.
Um, Not that that necessarily makes one a feminist, but I think that I am in favor of just about most of what feminism stands for as we know it,
Hmm. Yeah.
except I am not in favor of owning a property of another person. So I'm not the property of my husband.
Hmm.
My children are not my property. And so I see that what has really happened in this movement is that the because of embryology, it's progressive science, it's
Hmm.
progressive politics to understand science, just like we accuse people who deny about climate chaos that they're
Hmm.
science deniers. Pro-life people are not science deniers. And we also understand not only the progress of science and embryology that teaches us about the development of the unborn human being, we also believe in the progress of a more expansive interpretation of human rights.
Hmm.
So, just as women ourselves were not always considered equal to men, we now are in a situation where here is another human being that also has this human right. And as a
Hmm.
culture, we are progressing. Pro life people are more progressive in their viewpoint than those who are not pro life. That's my interpretation of it.
Well, one of the things I want to mention, we're just about out of time, is that I found out about you because I was interviewing you on another subject, and you were talking about doing protests back in the day of Martin Luther King and Gandhi and whatever.
Mhm,
And
mhm, yes.
And Carol's you're what, like 4'11"? Is
Right.
that? Yeah, I mean you're a tiny thing, and she's telling me how she was teaching people how to get peacefully arrested back in the day, and the protests back then had that like you have told me a number of times that Gandhi or Martin Luther King quality to them, as opposed to, and that's why that's why I use the word rock throwers,
Okay.
violently trying to affect somebody's opinion. It's very hard to yell at somebody to get them over to your side, and that's not what you guys do. So,
Right.
so
Thank you for bringing that up. Yes.
well, and how do people get in touch with you? If website and whatever, let's do a little
Sure.
retail here.
It's fclny.org.
Hmm.
And we are located in Rochester, New York. This is where our headquarters are, but we have we have individuals who represent us in 6 or 7 different parts of the state,
Hmm.
so that we are represented across the state.
Oh, that's wonderful. And you say you're a Democrat. I know one a Democrat for life, and that's my son-in-law.
Uh, I think there's a lot of us out
I
here.
think
There's
I
really
think
a lot.
I think they're very well be. Well, God bless you for what you do, and I'm going to have Melissa. Melissa's going to be on for the next guest right now. So I appreciate your friendship and what you do.
Thank you, Dom.
Did you know there are more pregnancy resource centers than abortion clinics in New York? Pregnancy centers value both mother and child and provide life-affirming care. They can help mothers apply for affordable housing, childcare assistance, and health insurance, provide cribs, car seats, clothes, and infant formula, plus access to nutrition programs, parenting classes, and adoption services. Please share our list of pregnancy resource centers. Join the growing pro-life feminist movement at fclny.org.
Well, everybody, my next guest is a wonderful woman by the name of Karen Melissa Ogden. Did I pronounce that right?
Close enough.
Close enough. I am so bad with those things. I'm sorry. I don't do this for a living, so you have to excuse me with my little foils and things like that. I heard Melissa talk at a presentation given by the Feminists Choosing Life New York, and what a wonderful organization. We were just talking to Carol a little bit before, but we talk about choice and having a choice or anti-abortion or what but being a feminist and having a respect for life in all stages doesn't preclude you from having a life and a message and a lifestyle that you choose. I think sometimes, Melissa, we look at the word feminist and it means career person. I mean, don't you think that's a little bit of the bias we have, right?
Yeah, boss lady, right? Like I don't even know what they say now, right? Like, yeah, there is a particular preconceived notion about what
Hmm.
that means in our world today. And I think, to understand why feminist choosing life of New York is so important in this whole abortion conversation is to say, right, how long has that word been co-opted?
Hmm. Yeah.
And, what does it look like? How do we add depth to that word? There is definitely like this two-dimensional figure of what feminism looks like. And Carol
Hmm.
and their team does a great job of saying, hey, there's like, do you really know what it means to be a feminist? And
Well,
what did our foremothers say and do? People
well,
don't know that.
and not be derided for that. My wife has an advanced degree, and she decided that she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. While the kids were growing up, right? And I was fortunate enough that I could make enough money for us to support ourselves, and she could have that lifestyle. Now my daughter's doing the same thing. She's an attorney. She could be making $400 an hour. As an attorney, she clerked for a federal judge at one time. She worked for the Department of Justice. Now she's at the University of Notre Dame. She worked there for a while, and she decided that after being an attorney for the University of Notre Dame, she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And they have a very humble lifestyle, but that's what she's choosing, to spend time with her two children, because that is. And I would say my two daughters are feminists. I
Yeah.
mean, they are feminists, but you beyond beyond everything else, you are probably in a very, very small club because you are an abortion survivor.
That's right. And it's a club that nobody asked to be in, you know?
Hmm.
I mean, I think I need to be clear about that because sometimes, I mean, we'll talk about what it means to be an abortion survivor because that term also is used by various people to mean different things. But, the reality is, I think everybody probably belongs to some sort of club in their life that they didn't
Hmm.
plan on getting invited to, right? Something related to trauma or loss or, whatever their cross or their struggle is. But some of them are a little heavier than others. And yeah, my biggest burden is that I survived the abortion procedure meant to end my life in the womb. And somehow, right? Somehow that's a tough pill for the rest of the world to swallow. And
Mm.
somehow I'm in many respects called to either be quiet or justify
Hmm.
why I'm alive or dare to speak out about it. And I can't think of any other social justice issue, Dom, where people are like, hey, I'm really sorry that happened to you, but be quiet.
Yeah. It's unfortunate that you're alive.
Right.
I mean, what an absurd concept. Now, one of the things I'm gonna give my speech number 137 here. My feeling about this is that there are things that I can understand that I can't agree with, and
Right.
there's some things that I absolutely can't understand and or agree with, and this has to do with this. Okay, I understand the people that say, well, it's just a couple of cells. It's, a week or two or whatever. That's really not a human being yet. Okay. I can understand why somebody would feel that way. That's not what I prescribe to. I think that, you make an error on the side of life. It is life. It is a human being. It's a potential human being. I got that. Okay. But I can understand that. What I can't understand is this abortion up to the day of birth. I mean, at what point in time, and this is, I guess, a philosophical question, at what point in time does that become a human being?
Right. And I mean, that's why the lives of those of us who survive our own abortions is so powerful, whether we like it or not, right? Our very existence is powerful in a world that has been so impacted by abortion and that wave of feminism that, right, continue to equate the ending of human life with a quote unquote choice and then right, all those things. And that's the question that I beg when people are willing to listen, which is, so when was this going to be better for me?
Yeah.
So my birth mother was forced at the age
Yeah.
of 19 to have a saline infusion abortion, as
Mhm.
you heard when I spoke there in that area. And, the reality is the abortionist didn't provide any adequate exam. My medical records reflect that he thought she was about 18 to 20 weeks. But the fact that I was able to live after being poisoned and scalded for 5 days, and I weighed nearly 3 pounds, a
Mm.
neonatologist indicated in my records I was probably 31 weeks gestation.
Mm.
And that's the question, Dom, right? Of so when was that going to be better for me? Would it have been better for me at 18 to 20 weeks, 31, 40? No, no. We know that it never was going to be better for me. It
Mhm.
was never going to be better for my birth mother either. Abortion is abortion is
Mm.
abortion. And I think that really is, it points out people's subjectivity on the issue of going, well, oh gosh, you were 31 weeks. That's awful. I mean, trust me, I get that response a lot. People are
Mhm.
like, oh, 31 weeks. Oh no, it's awful. And I'm like, so what about 18?
Mhm.
What about 12? What about
Right.
6?
Right. And that's, I guess that's the problem with this, with this whole thing is that as a society, what are we deciding? I mean, it would
Right.
at when you go into labor, okay, I guess it's theoretically possible that you could have an abortion. And the other thing about that is that nobody wants to think about it. Nobody wants to
Right.
think about what that is,
Right.
and what the doctor has to do to facilitate that.
Yeah. Well,
You
and
know,
I
that,
think that's a great, I mean, I think you're touching on a really important point when we're sort of like scratching our head and going, what on earth? Why are people not thinking critically about this issue?
Mhm.
Because they don't want to. Because
Yeah,
abortion is
it's hard to think
awful.
about. It's hard to think about. It really is hard to think about. No matter what, it's hard to think about. Now
And
let's.
that's one of the reasons why
Yeah.
I think, even though some of the things that are said about us, especially
Mhm.
in the age of social media, blah, right? People say things they would never say to my face.
Oh yeah.
But I think that is one of those kind of sticky wickets related to abortion survivors, which is, people deny our existence, not just because it's hard to swallow, but because it doesn't make sense. Because people know that abortion
Hmm.
is the taking of life. They do. At the end of the day, they do, whether they want to admit it or not. And so they wrestle with us because they're thinking, well,
Yeah.
I mean, I know what it is. How are they here? And how do they look perfectly normal, right? People say all of these things all the time, like, there's no way you could have survived an abortion. You look normal. Well, my apologies. This isn't how this was supposed to come out, right? Like, sorry, not sorry.
Well, it was a couple of months ago that I was able to hear Amy Coney Barrett
Yeah.
at Notre Dame
Oh,
giving a talk. She has seven children. Okay,
right.
two of them are adopted, seven children, and she said that that has been people look at her and like, well, you're the handmaiden, and I mean she's a Supreme Court justice and she's getting derided because she is a working a self-actualized mom. I think she would rather have her described as a mother rather than a Supreme Court judge. I think that's what her soul is made from, and she gets derided, and it's just an awful concept.
Which I think is so confusing as, we talk about feminism because that is the mixed message that women get
Right.
is, oh, you can do all things, but hey, that motherhood thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
I mean,
and that's what I admire Nita. I really do. She's got an advanced degree. She could have been in the corporate world doing whatever she wanted to do. She goes, no, this is what I want to do. And then she wouldn't get derided by anybody. She would, like, okay, that's what you think. Then stay at home mom. But what you can think what you want. I don't care. So
right.
and I think especially with younger women and my daughters and whatever they have this internal locus of control where I think a lot of people don't and
Mhm.
not just especially women, but I think people are motivated, but like you were saying, by social media and people's opinions and stuff. So
And I think that's that dangerous, slippery slope as, we look around and go, man, how did we get here to where
hmm
things have been so, like, we know it doesn't make sense what we've seen in our culture for so long. And I mean, that's the answer, right? Is people have been so impacted by the messaging of abortion advocates and that wave of feminism. And it has completely infiltrated our culture. And it really takes parents, grandparents, other women being an example to other women to say, hey, can I
hmm
tell you what this is really like? And I mean, that's what gives me hope. You probably have read some of the same headlines I have, which is, there are so many young women right now who are having a family first, even if they have an advanced
hmm
degree, and then they're getting
Right.
involved in the corporate world once their
Yes.
children, and it makes
Yes.
sense,
Well, there was nobody on their deathbed said I should have had less children.
right?
Right. The time passes, and at some point in time, you say, well, there's an opportunity that I had at one time, and I didn't take advantage of it. And certainly when you get to be my age, I turned 72 last week, you look back at things and say, well, I should have done this and I should have done that. But, the time is running out because we're all mortal and, at some point we're going to pass away. And one of the things I'd like to get a little bit into is that your personal story, because it really is fascinating on how the actual story of when you were born and the people the nurse at the hospital and everything. Look, spend some time saying that because it's a really great story.
Yeah, well, and that's the reality that's hidden underneath our culture's narrative about abortion is that, yes, not only is abortion the intentional taking of an innocent human life, no matter what gestation they're at. But the other piece that lies underneath there is that yes, babies survive abortion procedures. They did long before Roe versus Wade. They did during Roe versus Wade, like me, and they are still today. So, just last week, my team at the Abortion Survivors Network, we heard from a college age student, and she survived an abortion, and that left her with some health issues. But these are the people we hear from all the time. So we have babies in the womb right now who survived the first attempt to abort them by abortion pill. And I say first attempt to abort them because they're not safe from being aborted again. Our world out there right now says keep going, right? Keep going, abort them until it's successful. And you don't want to have that baby because they're probably injured. I mean, we had a mom last week reaching out who was 4 months along after her abortion did not work. And she spent months believing it had, right? So we live in these stories all the time. But for me, I am one of those who survived during Roe. So I shouldn't have to tell anybody how old I am, but here I am. I survived back in 1977. And I share that because I want people to understand how Roe impacted people's lives. And for me, that's what led to my birth mother being forced to abort me. My birth parents were engaged to be married. I really have no doubt, Dom, that they loved one another deeply and they would have married, they would have parented me if only they had been given the opportunity. But my birth mother's family was not happy about that unplanned pregnancy and had the ability, because my grandmother was an OBGYN nurse and an educator and supervisor, they had the ability to force my birth mother into St. Luke's Hospital in Sioux City, Iowa, where they lived, and started the procedure that should have ended my life. I do a lot of things around the world related to the protection of life and really just education and advocacy. But, part of what I've been doing this last year is I've been an expert witness in a court case involving Planned Parenthood. And it's really interesting because in like just depositions and then sitting in the courtroom, really the vein of conversation from them at me were things like, everybody who contacts you, that's just anecdotal. They don't have records. Like, well, your system is what is preventing women from having their abortion records and also, denying abortion survivors any sort of record of what happened to them. From time to time, we're successful and help people obtain medical records. Sometimes it's buried somewhere deeper in, their pediatric records or things like that. But I am one of those survivors who actually does have my medical records. So, that's how I know as much as I do. It lasted 5 days. It shouldn't have lasted that long. And when they finally induced my birth mother's labor on the 5th day, after believing she was going to die in the abortion as well, I was accidentally born alive. And so I'm sort of the poster child of what most people in our world think an abortion survivor is, the baby who's born in the final step of the procedure. And that still happens today. People can go to our website. It's abortionsurvivors.org. You can read through the research of babies who are surviving second trimester abortions, second trimester, third trimester abortions. So yes, there are babies still being born alive in the final steps of abortion procedures. But more often than not, babies survive abortions in today's world by early trimester abortions and women believing that it had been successful. And so they go weeks and usually months. So it's continued pregnancy before ultimately that baby is born alive if they aren't aborted multiple times throughout that process. And that's weird, right? To have to talk about.
Yeah, well, the thing that I appreciate about you and Carol's organization that she started is that sometimes you get the reputation when you are resisting something of being. I call them rock throwers. Rock throwers are
Yeah.
Molotov cocktails and whatever. Carol, and a very interesting story because I interviewed her because she owns the original birth home
Right.
of Susan B. Anthony.
Right.
And after the show, she's like, "Well, I know a little bit about this, that, and the other thing, and protesting." And she goes, I was protesting in the '60s." "Oh yeah," he says. "Oh yeah, I was really involved in that. We were we were uh, using the philosophy of Gandhi and Martin Luther King." He says we weren't blowing things up and using Molotov cocktails. She goes, and I taught people how to get arrested." And I'm like, she's 4'11", yeah, right?
Right.
Right, she's teaching people how to peacefully get arrested. But what it was is in the day, it was grassroots, and people weren't yelling and screaming as much as they were educating and kind of
Yeah.
gumming things up.
Yeah.
And the thing about you and your organization and Carol's organization is that this is educational. It is supportive of people psychologically and emotionally. And what I take a look, they just made a new commercial. I think I might be able to have it on the show. And the portion of the commercial that I really, really like, the whole idea of the commercial I really like is that if you have an unwanted pregnancy and you find yourself that you think you're backed into a corner, there are people to help you. It's not necessarily that you need to go have an abortion because you have an economic problem or whatever. There are people that will help you, and we're part of that. We're part of that organization, the Feminists Choosing Life, and I think that's a great message. That's a great way to go. But like I said, sometimes you get labeled one way, and it's not exactly right. And you guys, well, I respect your organization. I have to tell you that.
Yeah, well, and thank you. And I think, it is hard because, and Carol and I have talked about this. It's tough when we know what's happening every single day to preborn
Hmm.
babies and their mothers, right? There's a sense of urgency that we feel as a movement. And when we feel that urgency, then we feel called, right, to act
Hmm.
and to say things. And yes, everybody has their own particular calling, but for me, the most important thing I can do is serve those that we're called to serve as an organization and be willing to, yeah, put ourselves out there, but to have conversations to attempt to, change people's minds and to think about things. And it's really about building bridges and not throwing rocks. I mean,
Right. Yeah. That's what I respect about this whole concept of educating people in a way and enlightening them to something that maybe they didn't consider before.
And it's a long game.
Well, and I'll go back to the thing in my mind. I try to square at what point is that a human being?
Right.
At some point, it is a human being. At what point is that? And what? And as a society, we can't agree on it. That's
Right.
why you got 50 states with 50 different laws. But what
Exactly.
can we agree on? Is it agree? I mean, there's some basic things that we should be able to agree on, and I think that one of them is that, uh, yeah, okay, people can make excuses and say, well, this situation or that situation or this situation, but then when you make a law that says that something is universally accepted, okay,
Right.
you're going to be in trouble
Right.
because not yeah, what is self-defense?
Right.
Okay. What is self-defense? I mean, try to define that in such a way that it covers every situation. You can't. So,
Right.
so
Yeah, and I think for me, that's the whole thing that I love so much about Carol and the work that they do because yes, one voice is powerful, right?
mhm,
But it's the voices of multiple people coming together that is amplified, right? The more that those voices get out there that say, "Hey, can I
mhm,
tell you what I know?"
yeah,
Right? Would
right,
you be willing to listen to a different perspective?
right. And the thing that I know I'm kind of repeating myself here, but this idea that to be a feminist, you have to feminist means a career or a lifestyle in a certain way, and that is not true. That is not true. You can be a self-assured, independent, self-actualized person without getting anybody else's opinion about what that should be. That's up to you, right?
Right. And I think, I mean, Carol's much more poignant on the issue than I am, but frankly, as a woman, I find that particular understanding of feminism to be incredibly short-sighted and a little bit derogatory
Right.
to women and to our feminist foremothers to be like, man, this is not what I had in mind for y'all.
No, no. The funny thing is not funny. Nita and I, um, we divided up our responsibilities. Okay, my job was to go out and hunt and gather,
Yeah.
and to support my daughters as a good role model as a man
Mhm.
for my.
Yeah.
Her job was to keep everything alive. I don't care if it was a plant, a pet, or a child.
Yep.
Her job was much more important than my job. Much more important than my job. And now that the kids are grown, she's doing a lot of really great things for her organizations that she's involved in. But she never had anybody look down at her and say, well, your life is not what it should be. You should have been this or that. And she's like, well, okay, fine, heck with you. So,
But again, I mean, I think that
yeah.
is the answers right in front of our faces,
Mhm.
right? In terms of how we change our culture and ultimately restore a culture of life. And that is the basic human understanding of the dignity and value of every person. And that includes women and
Mhm.
men, right? As they are created, as they are complementary to one another, right? And I think that's what gives me hope. My oldest daughter is 17, and I love that this particular generation gets a different understanding about
Oh yeah.
men's roles and women's roles, and that, yeah, it is not about less than. It is about really God was very, very deliberate in the way that we are wired,
Right.
and we're not in competition. I mean, that's
Right.
that weird thing about that wave of feminism. Like, no, I'm sorry. I'm never going to compete with a man because I don't want to. I
Mhm.
don't want to.
Yeah. So if we're just about out of time, but let me ask you a question. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you, support you, let's do a little. I call it a little retail. Let's do a little retail here
Sure.
about your organization, how to get in touch with you.
Yeah, so our website is abortionsurvivors.org. We are the only organization around the world that serves people who survive their own abortion procedures or the women who have gone through their abortion not going the way they planned it to, and they need somebody to talk to. I have two
Hmm.
social workers. I'm also a clinical social worker. And we have a community where these moms talk to one another, establish
Hmm.
informal relationships that right, bring them some empowerment and healing and help them process through grief and shame and guilt and all those things. We do the same thing for adoptive families. We also do a lot of advocacy and education. And so we have a speakers bureau called Real Abortion Stories. If people want to
Hmm.
book a speaker, that's part of what we do because that's how we change our culture is having those voices be heard. And we also do a lot of what I call advocacy storytelling, which is sharing those stories that are
Hmm.
otherwise buried underneath the narrative of abortion in our culture. And so people can check out mybody-myvoice.org. Also follow us on social media with those handles. You can hear and see people whose stories will blow your mind. And that's one great way your audience can be a part of this movement, which is follow us and then share these stories with other people.
Now, are there any books that you can recommend?
Well, my own.
Well, there you
um,
go.
that it start there. So I have two books. My first book is "You Carried Me: A Daughter's Memoir," which is my personal story, and there's a lot we didn't talk about today, and it is really an amazing
Hmm.
God story in terms of not only how I survived, but the healing and the connections that have been brought about in my biological family. And my second book is Abortion Survivors Break Their Silence. So that one shares the story of about 11 abortion survivors and also women who are sharing their stories for the first time about how their abortions didn't go as planned.
So I guess this begs the question. I just thought of this now. So when you were born, aborted, whatever. Now, what was the
Whatever.
yeah, whatever you were, born, aborted. Uh, what was supposed to happen to you? I mean, I mean, there was somebody, a nurse or takes a look at you and said, no, this is a viable human being. What would happen if that didn't happen? I mean, you were supposed to starve to death, or I mean, I don't understand what was supposed to happen then.
Well, at that hospital, babies who survived abortions were put in a utility closet in a bucket of formaldehyde to be dead.
Ah,
And I know that, Dom, because
ah,
nurses who did it have apologized to me. And, I hate to end there in this interview, but maybe that's where we need to end it so that people understand the
yeah.
gravity of the issue. I'm somebody's child, I'm somebody's mom, right? I'm somebody's friend. And to know that my own children never would have lived if that
Hmm.
abortion would have been successful, it's not terrible that we have to reflect on that from time to time because I hope that motivates people.
Well, and the thing is that some of these things, it's just hard to think about. But you know what?
Mhm.
That's what adults do or should do.
Right. Yeah.
You should be able to consider things that are hard to think about.
Yeah.
Stop flipping through your phone and think about exactly what something means.
Yeah.
If you're saying you're going to have an abortion in 8 and 9 months, what is that? What is that like? Nobody wants to
Mhm.
talk about that. Nobody wants to think about that.
Yep.
Okay. And especially when you hold a preemie baby that is in a NICU and is premature by how much, and you look at that little thing and you say, well, that they could have aborted that baby, and but that's real, that's not alive.
Right.
That's a hard thing to think about. But anyway, I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to make a YouTube out of this too, so we can send this to whoever you want. Carol is an incredible, incredible human being.
Forced to be reckoned with in every good
Yes,
way.
she's 4'11", and well, I used to teach people how to get arrested. Oh, she's a hoot. Well, thank you ever so much. And if
Thank
you're
you.
ever, I'm sure you'll be up this way again sometime. And
I have no doubt.
I'd love to see you again.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Yeah, thanks for being on my show.
Thanks for listening. You can find our previous shows at nononsenseroundtable.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll make more.